This has got to be the most depressing podcast that we've ever had to do. When we started Backward Point back in 2023, and then before that, in a different variation of this podcast in 2022, we never thought that we'd be doing an episode like this where we'd have to be talking about something other than cricket inflicting cricket. Again, I'm talking about the suspension of the IPL and the PSL together. IPL allegedly for a week. PSL, as we speak, we don't really know when it's coming back. Both of those international leagues were running concurrently and have been postponed due to security threats from opposing countries. India from Pakistan, Pakistan from India. We'll talk about this. We'll talk about the greater aspect of these escalations / war on cricket, and then just our general thoughts on what it just means to cover this from Canada. You know, we have family in Pakistan. We have friends in India. We have stakes in both sides. As cricket playing nations, these two are the biggest in terms of population size and interest. And it's a sad and depressing reality that we are here right now. And we will try our best to cover both stories with as much nuance as possible. And if we are wrong in anything statistically or stating something, we do apologize. With me, as always, my brother, my co-host, Bashar Sayed.
PSL daily number 21.
And probably paused after that.
Yeah, probably the last one indefinitely.
Yeah.
Very sad. I like you said, I didn't think I would ever come on this podcast and be here talking about the current political landscape, but we're kind of forced to.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes politics and cricket, especially when it comes to India and Pakistan, get mixed up.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, but over the course of our history, it's happened. And this instance is another one where two of the biggest leagues happening right now, the IPL and the PSL, have both been postponed, suspended. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the timeline of how this all happened. And let's start with what happened a couple of days ago, where the Peshawar Zalmi versus Karachi Kings match was scheduled in Pindi.
I believe so, yes.
And hours before that match, there was a drone intercepted on the outskirts of the Pindi Stadium.
So the Pindi Sports Complex is where the Rawalpindi Cricket Stadium is, I believe. And you're right, or the outskirts of it, there was an Indian drone intercepted that then damaged some buildings right outside the stadium.
Correct. So outside the stadium, like you mentioned, there's a sports complex and there's a food street. And that's where that drone from India was intercepted. And quite evidently, they had to reschedule the match for that night. And eventually, the match got suspended, got rescheduled, and the PSL got moved to the UAE because just the Pakistan or India situations weren't safe for any of the foreign players to be in Pakistan.
At the same time, there was, I believe, it was an RCB versus Punjab Kings match, Bashar? Is that the one that got
There's
canceled?
A Punjab Kings match. I don't know who
was it
they're
RCB?
facing. I'm not sure who they're facing.
Okay, I will just double check this. But there was it was Punjab Kings versus DC. That game was happening. I believe 10 overs were bowled, and there was a malfunction in the lights, which caused some sort of panic. We saw the video from the cheerleader who was recording on the ground. At the same time, the ESPN Cricinfo was reporting that it was a light failure, and then they reported security threats, and then they went back to the light failure as the object of the suspension. That game got suspended, and then the entire IPL got suspended. They were trying to move it to the UAE, as I believe from what I read. They weren't able to do it because the PSL had already committed to the UAE. And then since then, the PSL got suspended from the UAE as well when Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif came out and said that this is not the time for cricket, kind of like an old parent, and being like, we're focusing on, this stuff right now. And I guess security threats and all that stuff were also evident when it came to the PSL being moved to the UAE. As I understand it, at the moment, at the time of recording this, Friday, May 9th, 10 p.m. in EST, all the foreign players are outside of Pakistan?
Yeah, I just saw a picture of a flight taking all the foreign staff outside of Pakistan. So likely
Probably
going to
Dubai,
Dubai, Abu Dhabi, or wherever
Yep.
they can get flights from.
So, and I'm not sure what the case is for India. Now, this is a very good time to mention a newsletter article that you sent me, Bashar, which we should link to the on the description of this podcast, which was written by Sam Perry from The Great Cricketer, who wrote it for the Cricket at All podcast, or Cricket at All newsletter, I should say, where he describes his experiences thinking that he's going to fly to Delhi to do a show because they're doing a live tour in India, the TGC is. And all of this is happening. And they're instead of going to Delhi, they're catching a flight for Abu Dhabi and coming back to Melbourne.
He also mentioned that they posted on their socials that they're leaving India for safety reasons. And then there were Indian officials who reached out to him to edit his post and remove the safety concern. Now, I also think that the light failure was also an excuse, and this was actually some sort of threat to the stadium,
course,
which is why they evacuated. And to ensure there's no panic within the people, they are not mentioning the actual security safety threat that there is.
I mean, if you're even tuned into Indian media right now, the mass hysteria on that side of the border is absolutely insane. Like the stuff that's been coming out from reputable journalistic authorities is insane. Like it's nothing less than quote unquote war porn, and disgusting, vile, not substantiated by any sort of truth. I wish saner heads would prevail when it came to reporting of this whole issue, because just clarity would be the number one thing that I would aspire to at a time like this. But I don't think we're getting that from the Indian narrative. The Pakistan narrative is not the best as well, very military driven, very state driven, but they're trying their best to provide as much stats and as much facts as possible. And I think the narrative there is a bit more clear and easier to understand.
I just think we're like the current warfare situation is we're living in an era of misinformation.
Completely.
And I think it's everyone's responsibility that when they see a piece of news that they go out there and verify it themselves before they forward it, retweet it, or send it to their friends. That's the least that we can do. I want to talk about how this will impact cricket going forward. Both of the leagues one has been postponed, one has been rescheduled. I read the IPL's media release, and they said that they're looking at future venues, dates, accommodations, and a week's time to have the IPL reconvened. But with how things are transpiring, I think that's going to be highly unlikely.
As we speak, a few hours ago, Pakistan launched their own operation against India. So the past 4 days, we haven't been covering it because we're a cricket podcast. That's also something that I think we should be very straightforward with. We're a cricket podcast. We podcast about cricket in the world. So to expect us to cover a war between India and Pakistan is foolish. That's not what we're going to do. That's not what we're doing here right now. But just to lead the timeline right, the escalation started 4 days ago, and then there was a response to a terrorist attack that happened in India, and then there was escalation from India towards Pakistan, and then now at this point of recording this podcast, a few hours ago, I believe 4 hours ago, Pakistan has also responded to further escalations, drones and more missiles into Pakistan, and now have launched their own operation against India. In this climate, I don't think cricket will happen. I did tweet from Backward Point that cricket lost today, and I think it was being misconstrued as I was prioritizing cricket over war. I don't think that's the case. What I was trying to say in that moment was that the bilateral and the collateral damage to these conflicts is cricket at large. The two biggest nations, Bashar, Pakistan and India, I said on top of the podcast, the most eyeballs, the most money, the biggest. Sometimes there are excuses of whole tournaments to have these two teams play. Will in the foreseeable future not play cricket with each other. That is probably a fact. If we go down the route of history, whenever these two countries have been at war or have had escalations or political tensions at an all-time high, the first thing that has been compromised has been cricket. Right now, it's in two different leagues, but the loser is you and I and the cricket lover and the cricket follower from both these nations. People cover the IPL, people cover the PSL as well. People make a lot of money doing that. It's a way for economic sustenance for a lot of these channels like us. You know, we've had sponsors especially on board for campaigns like this that get stalled. There's so much economic turmoil when it comes to these things getting canceled. And then we've seen previously as well that these two nations, when they go at war, they don't play cricket for decades sometimes. Like right now, bilateral series have resumed between these two countries since 2012/13 when Pakistan went into India to play three ODIs and T20Is.
Yeah.
Two T20Is, yes. That was the last time these two had bilateral series. Before that, it was, I believe, 2008, the Asia Cup when India came to Pakistan. Before that, there was this run of series going on when political tensions were low and both the governments were ready to talk to each other. And every time that these sort of escalations happen, cricket is the first one to go down.
So in the last 12 years, Pakistan and India have only faced each other when it comes to Asia Cups and when it comes to ICC events. Now, I think with just how insanely crazy things have been the past few days, this might have an impact on how Pakistan faces India in any event. We have the Asia Cup scheduled in October, and the Asia Cup we know is designed in a way to have the maximum number of India versus Pakistan matches. To explain, Asia Cup is a tournament of 6 teams where there's, for some reason, 2 groups of 3 teams each, and obviously India and Pakistan are put in the same group. And then the bottom team from each group is eliminated, and teams go into Super 4, where teams face each other again. So that guarantees another India versus Pakistan match. And if the day is right, the tournament's progressing as the sponsors wanted to,
Which hasn't been in a very long time.
in a very long time, India-Pakistan could play an Asia Cup final. It hasn't happened in many years.
I don't even remember the last
I
time.
don't think it's ever happened.
You might be right on that.
So,
I don't remember it last time happened.
but the idea is to have the format of the Asia Cup so that there's a maximum number of India versus Pakistan matches.
Yeah.
They happen in Asia, prime time in Pakistan, prime time in India, lots of ad revenue. So-
Millions, almost like hundreds of millions of viewers on eyeballs on those matches, which makes the ads that much more costly, and people make a lot of money on both sides, right? That's the premise of an India-Pakistan game. That is the moneymaker. The Champions Trophy, I believe, if I read the numbers right, I think 30 to 40% of the revenue of the entire Champions Trophy came from one game, which happened in Dubai, which you and I were present for live. So a lot lies on just cricket stability on these two teams playing as much as possible. And with the current tensions and, brink of war, or some would say, the inception of war already begun, I don't see them playing, at least formally, the way that they did even after the tensions had escalated previously, where they were just playing, group stages. I don't even see that happening in the near future.
Let's also talk about current standings. So currently, in 2023, Pakistan went to India for the ODI World Cup. This year, there was a Champions Trophy scheduled in Pakistan. Actually, I'm actually going, skipping ahead. In 2023, there was an Asia Cup that was supposed to be hosted by Pakistan. And every team came to Pakistan except for India. India played their matches in a neutral venue in Sri Lanka, where Pakistan had to do the brunt of the traveling.
Yeah.
Travel fatigue, all that stuff impacted our players and their performances. But Pakistan went to India for the ODI World Cup, right? There was a Champions Trophy scheduled in Pakistan this year. India said that they will not come to Pakistan. They'll play their games in Dubai. So they played all of their matches in one single venue.
Literally all of them.
And to that, Pakistan said that there's a T20 World Cup happening next year. We'll play our matches in Dubai or Sri Lanka.
Even before that, there is a Women's World Cup happening that is also being hosted by India, which I don't think the Pakistan women's team is going to play that. I think they're going to play a neutral venue.
Correct. So that's where we stand currently.
Yeah.
With the recent stuff that's happened, I think if India has that much control and power over the ICC, I mean, Jay Shah is the chairman of the ICC?
Yep.
They should be in a position to say, we don't want to face Pakistan even in ICC tournaments. We know it's a moneymaker. We know everybody makes money out of it. But if the country comes first, we don't want to face Pakistan there too.
Now,
If it comes to it, we'll face them if we have to in the knockouts, but let's avoid it if we can.
yeah, that just puts so much more pressure on knockout games like that, right? I think the first time that Pakistan and India played each other after the 26-11 attacks was 2011 semifinal, which is crazy because that game was so high octanes, high pressure in India. Pakistani Prime Minister shows up, Indian Prime Minister shows up to the game, and this is like, then it becomes not cricket anymore. It becomes something else, right? It becomes just surrogate warfare and all that. What we've seen when we've covered cricket, at least on this side, if we stick to cricket, whenever there is an India-Pakistan game, the mass hysteria on the Indian side is insane. I mean, we saw it live when we were in Dubai covering the India versus Pakistan game for the Champions Trophy.
We could feel the hostility within the crowd. And we actually recorded a bit for our channel, which was the Indian fans' reaction in the preview of the India versus Pakistan match. There's a lot of footage that we did not put in the actual video released.
For a couple of reasons. One of them was that the audio was not the best because the audio was not being recorded in the first round of interviews that I did. And among the first round of interviews was a lot of the hostility that you're talking about, which was just uncles coming out and talking about Pakistani cricketers being little boys. They're little boys.
Babies.
We are babies. We'll shoot them out of the ground and like stuff like that. Very aggressive undertones of like war and military and all that. And I was like, oh, okay, well, let's take a
It's
step
like
back,
they're
guys.
using cricket as a way to take out all their frustration.
The pent-up
against
anger
Pakistan.
that has been built, that has been fueled by the, I believe, the Indian media, which is just like if you open up any channel right now, the amount of misinformation, disinformation, mass hysteria, jingoism being portrayed, it's shameful, shameful. And it's not just Indian media channels or legacy media channels. I see it from sports channels like Sports Yari, who's like live covering the war. This is not India Pakistan, guys.
I think if you want to just go on a very, very low scale, go back to any of our India versus Pakistan previews or reviews and just open the comment section. Go to any of our reels and open the comment section there.
So we've been quite quiet about all that because whenever there are India and Pakistan face in cricket, there is always an upheaval and in our comment section because we are a Pakistan leading cricket podcast. Our favorite team is Pakistan cricket team. That does not always equal that we are always pro-Pakistani. There are obviously stuff in Pakistan that even though our families are there and our background is from there that we like and dislike, and some things we agree with, some things we disagree with. I think that is a right for every citizen of every country. I live in Canada. I don't agree with everything that the Canadian government does. That doesn't mean I'm any less Canadian, et cetera, et cetera. And so, but my team is the Pakistan cricket team. Like that's the team I watched as I grew up. We've only lived in Pakistan for 7 years, but like in my 28-year-old life, 7 years in Pakistan, 21 years not in Pakistan, that's just my team, man. That's like, people who watch the Maple Leafs their entire lives at the age of 6 or 7, that's their team. Even if they live in the US, the States, UK, whatever, that's your team. I know friends who support Manchester United, never been to Manchester in their entire lives. Correct? So it doesn't obviously always relate to the fact that because you're from a certain country, that means that's the team you're going to support. But that just happens to be the case when it comes to Pakistan here. And what was my point? I'm on such a huge tangent. It's been sad seeing the response from just that casual Indian cricket fan who's watching our podcast, wanting to know what we're thinking about Pakistan's continuous losses in ICC tournaments against India or not making it past the first round. And we've been very open and we've live streamed Pakistan India games, and we were an hour-long podcast of us crying on Pakistan versus USA in the 2024 T20 World Cup. And the comments are just hateful.
We encourage cricket discourse,
of course,
but oftentimes it's not about cricket.
And you can see the undertones, the violent undertones in a lot of these comments. Porkistanis, we get called that all the time. We actually banned that word in our comment section, so whoever does that, just that comment gets hidden. A lot of that kind of jingoism, racist rhetoric used just because we're covering Pakistan cricket or we have a certain stance. If you're a Lakers fan, you automatically hate the Celtics. If you're a Pakistan cricket fan, you automatically have gripes against the Indian cricket team. Like that's just how rivalries work. Like there's nothing crazy about that. Liverpool, Manchester United, that's the rivalry that's been going on for decades as well. There is some sort of push and pull when it comes to sports commentary. That's the nature of sports. We understand that, but it's always in a respectful, healthy manner. I believe that whenever we've been covering India versus Pakistan, we've noticed the vitriol, and it's not just us. We talked to the pro sports guys; they've seen it as well. They might be a bit more head on when it comes to tackling that kind of commentary on their podcast or on Twitter. We're not as live on Twitter as much as Behram and Sadar, but we see it there as well. The Pakistan experience, whenever he covers anything, actually, Shahzad Ghazi, we see it there as well. And I know it takes a toll on him. I just listened to his recent podcast with Qazi Akbar, and he was talking about how it F's with his mental health. It messes with us up too. Like there's so many times that I come in barging in your room, like fuming at some comment that I just want to reply to, and you're like, bro, there's no point. Forget about it. You're not changing anyone's mind. But you can see that sort of vitriol being spewed when it just comes to cricket, and then it being rolled over when it comes to actual, real physical implications to war. And that's why we're here.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate. If you look at just cricket in general, what is cricket? Cricket just it's a 10-team sport. If you look at the ODI World Cup, 10 teams play a World Cup, the biggest tournament, biggest format, whatever it is. And even amongst that, probably the two biggest matches that happen is the India-Pakistan match and the
Final.
Australia-England match.
And then the final.
Right? So cricket is just World Cups plus Ashes events. Nobody cares apart from any of those singular events. So if India and Pakistan don't play each other, what is cricket remaining?
Yeah, that's the question. And
And the bulk of the viewership comes from India Pakistan. That's the reason why when a game happens here in West Indies, in New York, for ICC events, the games start at 10 a.m. Eastern time.
Yeah.
So it's 8 p.m. or 7 p.m. India time or Pakistan time. Right? So it's prime time television there. They get the best ads, most eyeballs.
I also want to touch upon this ESPN Cricinfo stuff that we discussed, at least online on social media. I noticed, and I tweeted about this, and I got some word out and some flair, that the ESPN Cricinfo, which is supposed to be a neutral cricket sports covering website or journal or magazine or whatever you want to call it, entity, has just not been covering the PSL. Not even remotely as close to as much as it's been covering the IPL, which I don't expect it to. IPL being the bigger brand, bigger league, but just the coverage being sporadic to the point of like covering one game every week. I call that out. It was the day when Hassan Nawaz and Riley Russo both scored a century, and I was like, I have not heard anything about this so far. Riley Russo
it was the highest score in the history of the PSL. It's the first time that two batters ever scored a century in the same match in the PSL. And there is literally no coverage about that.
Until I pointed it out. I went on Twitter. I tweeted about it. I went on Instagram. I tagged ESPN Cricinfo. I posted those same tweets there. There was also a typo in there. I don't know if people caught that. But I started to raise some voice upon this singling outness or singularity or whatever you want to call it. There's this otherness of this is not the league that we're going to cover. This is the league we're going to go wholeheartedly, which they have the choice to do that, but then don't claim to be a neutral editorial organization. Just say that we're not, like we said, we're not going to cover the IPL because we don't think that it's been fair to Pakistani cricketers. That's been our prerogative. That's been our position. Like it, don't like it. That's up to you. But we've been clear about our position. Cricinfo should be clear that they're not going to cover the PSL if they have political inclinations or they line themselves up with a certain government policy. The ESPN Cricinfo headquarters being in Bangalore is not suspicious to me at all.
Just to clarify, we're talking about the coverage on the socials.
Social media. So this was the confusing part of it, and I try to clear it up as much as possible. I don't think the message was gone far and wide. But the live scorecards and the live scoring and the live commentary
Match
on
reports.
the website, match report on the website, live, they're available. On social media, you can still go and check this out. I screen recorded that entire timeline from the Riley Russo century announcement that they did post all the way back. And the last game before that was the Peshawar Zalmi versus Islamabad United game, I believe. That was 6 days prior to that game.
I sent you a list of all the matches they covered in the past 2 weeks, and they were in patches. They covered one match, there was like a 3-match gap, and then the next match, and it's just scorecards, the post-match scorecard. That's it. And not even consistent.
And contrast to what they were covering with the IPL, it's not just scorecards, it's like player cards and mid-inning reviews and mid-inning cards. And like the coverage of the IPL versus the PSL was just insane. Completely different polls. To the point where why even make an effort to cover the PSL if you're not going to be remotely interested in it? And I called that out. And I think it was important for our podcast to call that out because we have been seeing more and more the India-fying of the sport of cricket. The machinery around the cricket being so India-centric that it just feels like there is no other team, there is no other league, there is no other players that matter in this sport at all. I mean, we saw it in 2014 or 2013 when they tried to do the big three with just like lining up these three. These are the three most important teams. The rest of you guys can suck it, basically. We saw that happen there, and obviously we didn't have a podcast there, but we called it out as loud as we could, being Pakistan cricket fans. And now I'm seeing this from an quote unquote impartial cricket magazine that covers cricket worldwide. Yeah, you put the scorecard on top. I see that, but what about social media? How am I supposed to go out and share? Like, I wanted to that. The way I realized that this was happening was when I went on to share the scorecard of Riley Rousseau's century on our channel, and I couldn't find it.
I noticed this a few days ago because after every match, I do post the match scorecard on Backward Point story on Instagram. And for the past few matches, I had to go on the PSL's website and their page to get the scorecard and the match summary to comment on that.
No problem for that. Like, that's not an issue. Is that ESPN Cricinfo is the place to go for cricket info. It's in the name.
We rely on it for updates, for records.
And we have some really good journalists covering the sport. Like, I love Daniel Rasool whenever there's a package from him. Osman Samyuddin, all-time favorite. So many great journalists working in that that framework, just not getting the voice or not getting the recognition or not getting the highlights because another league is overturning. Like, it's been ridiculous, the coverage. And we've been seeing this India-fying of the sport for a very long time. It just seems like the BCCI want this to be a India-centric. They don't want anything else apart from the four walls of India covering the sport. We saw this when the TGC got called out, got sent a cease and desist notice from, I believe, the BCCI for using and covering the IPL, using the players' names, using the team names, images, graphics, likeness. This is not how you grow a sport.
We've talked to people who work in cricket, who work in the ICC, and that is the same concern that they have for this sport, for the Indification of the whole sport, not growing it to other areas of the world, and just making it sure that no other country can join in. India is a central figure. They take the most revenue. They bring in the most money. It's unfortunate, and I don't see the sport growing any further with the current scenario and what's happening to it on the coverage platforms. There's been times on Cricinfo where I've had to scroll through a long time to find a Pakistan scorecard.
Yeah.
Like, there's an IPL scorecard, there's a women's match going on, there's an associate nation match going on.
Thailand versus Malaysia is apparently more important. Like, Kuwait women versus Thailand women is happening. And then all the way to the end is like the PSL games that I'm trying to cover, or the Pakistan games, or whatever the case may be. It's been blatant for so long, and the PCB and the Pakistan cricket infrastructure is so like, it's so frustrating the way that they have not caught up to this, that there is no alternative to a Cricinfo. Crickbuzz also owned by India.
I think
Cricinfo also owned by
Ali 13 tried to
with grassroots, right?
Do this with grassroots cricket.
Not enough funding.
But according to him, it was a money losing
Of course.
business.
Of course. Because there's no infrastructure for cricket monetization. Like, we've seen this firsthand when we've been to the IPL, when we've been to the PSL, and when we've been in places covering cricket around the world. The infrastructure that the Indian Premier League and the BCCI have in India is insane. Like, we've worked with people in the GT20 that have worked in the IPL, and the stories they tell us, the amount of money that's being poured in, the professionalism.
Joy Bhattacharya
Was there.
We spoke with him here last year.
Yep.
He worked at Crickbuzz. He worked at the KKR.
Yep.
And he was very disappointed of how the cricket system is built. Like, there's no cricket industry outside of India.
Of course. And I feel like that's designed so that remains the case. And so, like, if I don't have a Cricinfo that's reporting timely on my games or on my sport or on my team, there's nowhere else I can find this. Crickbuzz doesn't even cover the PSL. Doesn't even cover domestic Pakistan matches. Yes, I can go on PCB's shitty website to find out the scorecard or whatever of like SNGPL versus Swigas or whatever. I think those are the same team, actually. PIA. But that's all I get. So why I said on the start of this podcast this is a very depressing thing is because it's bleak if you're not an Indian cricket fan. It's absolutely bleak. And, those reverberations can be felt between not just being a Pakistan cricket fan, but a cricket fan in general. Like Sam Perry having to write that article, leaving, where was he at the time? I forget, somewhere in Punjab, leaving there, going to the Abu Dhabi, coming to Melbourne, them getting attacked the way that they did TGC, us, our comment section. You probably at the point of this recording, you can check the comment section and tell me what you guys find, because we are not banned in India. We are not being banned from our social media on India because we're a Canadian-based organization.
Kind of offended by that.
You're offended by that?
It means that we're not relevant enough to be banned.
Pro Sports was banned.
Our Instagram's open, our Twitter's open,
but at the same
our
time,
Instagram's open.
I think if it gives us more onus to be more responsible with our messaging and be as clear and concise with our messaging, and maybe be loud enough that maybe some Indian cricket fans do listen to us and have a different point of view. I think that's very important. If we are not banned, and I hope we stay unbanned. I hope that whoever is listening to this, if they're from the Indian border and they're listening, I hope there's some sort of semblance is being made, because this is a cricket podcast. I will stick to cricket, but I have to call a spade a spade. I have to call the Indian aggression an Indian aggression, and what they've been doing in bullying smaller teams and teams like Pakistan all around the ICC. It's similar to what they're doing in the region, and it's not fair. It's not good for cricket. It's not good for geopolitics. I mean, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, they've been one state for thousands of years, man. And suddenly you draw an invisible line before, and now you're fighting like crazy. I think it sucks. It's harsh, but I just hope that our Indian audience understands our nuance when it comes to this, and understands where we're coming from, and hopefully goes back and has enough courage to speak up and talk about this stuff.
I think ultimately we can all agree to blame the British.
Yeah,
because they were the ones who drew the line in Palestine. They drew the line on Kashmir.
Yeah.
And they made the sport of cricket.
Yep.
Which is why we have a podcast on it.
Yes, they did. They invented cricket.
So
and now
much trauma inflicted because of the British.
And not only militarily, but on the cricket field as well. I totally agree. Bashar, is there anything else that you want to talk about before we wrap this up?
I know you want to use this podcast as a platform to change minds, but just I've seen the discourse online. I'm seeing the way this is being portrayed on the Indian media. I think we're far beyond the concept of changing minds and me convincing you, convincing me.
Mm-hmm.
It's just absolute hysteria. And I hope things de-escalate. I hope things settle down.
Because at the end of the day,
I'm
man,
anti-war. I'm anti-human lives.
Yeah.
And
at the end of the day, it's
not
people
benefit
dying.
Anybody.
It's people dying, right? When our friends are texting us that, hey, I'm hearing Indian drones over my house. And that's like deep into the city of Karachi, like the heart of Karachi. That's scary. And when it's like everyday civilians being, psychological warfare, whatever it's called, when you have drone warfare, that's scary, because then that gets out of the battlefield of whatever the war is supposed to be and into their cities. And that's tricky, man. That's not fair to anybody. And then the same thing can happen in India. And then suddenly our Indian friends or people who listen to our podcast from India are now having the same reaction to listening to like Pakistan military over their heads or drones or whatever. This is not the ladder of escalation leads to death. That's not what we're in favor of. I hope that both sides find some sort of peace and come to a conclusion which is fair and just and peaceful, without the loss of lives, and with as much less casualties as possible, because it's a shame if this gets escalated anymore.
Amen.
Right? We're praying for both sides, hoping that there's less damage on both sides. We're hoping that there's no loss of life, and that we get to come back and talk about cricket with the same vigor that we did before. Right? The PSL was getting to a place where it was getting very interesting. The next few games was going to decide the top four. Be very excited about that. There were some really good games happening in the IPL as well that we were covering in our periphery. We did mention a few of them here. It's again a loss for cricket that this is happening, but it's largely, if you zoom out, it's more loss for just the two countries who are neighbors sitting next to each other. I see this, Bashar, as an opportunity to talk to as many people as possible. And we're here in Canada, which our neighbor has also been a little bit hostile down south, and we have the civic capacity to go talk to them, with Carney going down and talking to Trump and easing out some sort of tensions. I just hope there's dialogue between the two sides in India and Pakistan, and they can come to some sort of agreement, whatever that looks like, that the conflict stops, the bloodshed stops, and then eventually the cricket resumes.
I agree.
Agreed? Amen? Amin? All right. Thank you guys for tuning in. I hope our rambling made some sense. I hope it was coherent. We would love to hear your opinions if they're positive. If not, then I don't know when we'll be back. I don't think there's any cricket happening anytime soon. There is the Pakistan-Bangladesh series. I don't know what's going to happen to that. It's in May, I believe, right? Right in the end of this month.
In a few weeks.
In a few weeks. I don't know what's going to happen to that. Does that get shifted to Dubai? Does that get postponed? I don't know. Like you said, the Asia Cup, I don't know what's happening to that either.
Pakistan's next head coach. Will Mike Hesson come to Pakistan after this?
Is Mike Hesson staying? Is Mike Hesson on the plane out of Pakistan? These are the questions we need answers to. Hopefully, if we have any other update for anybody regarding the cricket, we'll be back. Until then, peace out and take care of yourselves.
We'll see you guys soon.
We'll see you guys soon. Take care.